This video is brought to you by PaperLike. Over the past 2 months, I know we've all seen content which pretty much goes like, I replaced my MacBook Pro with my iPad Pro and it's a really futuristic and great experience, and like, I get it. And I'm not trying to insult creators who have said that. I think they mean well. But I think it's a bit disingenuous to say like it's a laptop replacement, because it's a great alternative. You can do a lot of the same things you can do with the laptop with this hardware combination, but it's not quite equivalent to a traditional MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro or any traditional laptop for that matter. So in this video, I want to touch on this and kind of talk about why the iPad Pro plus Magic Keyboard might not be for you. But before we continue here, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like on this video, comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or opinions, as the YouTube algorithm likes that and will help push my content to more people. And if you are a recurring viewer, go ahead and click the bell icon and enable all notifications. It does help the channel out a lot. So let's take a good news, bad news approach to this video topic. And first up, let me tell you why iPad Pro plus Magic Keyboard makes a great laptop alternative and what may make it even, superior to that of a traditional laptop device. And the first thing that comes to mind is the 120 Hz display. It's just mwah, it's beautiful even though it's not OLED, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I bought this device. It just makes the interface, the UI, whatever, the user experience just so buttery and amazing. And it's complemented by iPadOS, which is a very fluid and dynamic operating system, which is not only good at some laptop-oriented tasks, which I'll talk about in a minute here, but of course, it's a fantastic tablet operating system first and foremost here. iOS has been on iPad since 2010, and it's great to be able to, read a book or just do tablet-oriented tasks, like, scrolling through YouTube on your couch here while just holding it like this. And while it's very well established that iPads make excellent tablet devices, and now more than ever, as I just said, the platform and the operating system can enable you to do, productivity-oriented tasks, schoolwork, college stuff. I've talked endlessly about this very, very nicely here. In fact, for example, I typed up the outline to this video with the Magic Keyboard on my iPad with the trackpad, and it's great, for writing. I've done a lot of, scripting and other, typing work with this device in Safari. You can do multitasking, you can like drag and drop apps to the left and right and swipe through different apps. And speaking of typing things up here, the Magic Keyboard, as I said in my review, is just excellent. It's a magic keyboard in every sense of the word, and it's just like the one you'd find on the MacBook Air 2020, for example, or any of the newer MacBook Pro models. It's very tactile, it has great travel, and especially with the 12.9-inch case, the keys are very nicely sized and spaced, and I really enjoy typing on this. And then there's the trackpad, the star of the show, the main event here with this case, and I'm not going to cover it, super in-depth in this video because I've talked about it plenty in other videos, but yeah, it makes for a great way to interact with iPadOS. It allows for a more hands-off approach, and I really like the way I can interact with text, without having to pull off the pencil or use the pencil or kind of get into the nitty-gritty with my finger. It's much more intuitive and brings the iPad Pro experience closer to that of a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air. And of course, beyond this new method of input, you have the handy dandy Apple Pencil. This is another reason why I bought the iPad Pro last year, because I'm super into handwriting notes, and I love doing that in GoodNotes that I have right here. I'm always keeping a planner, and when I'm actually in college, I'm always taking handwritten notes for my memory and just for organization. And then of course, this stylus is a godsend if you're doing any kind of artwork with Procreate or any other app that can take advantage of this hardware, especially the pressure sensitivity. Long story short, the iPad Pro plus Apple Pencil is a very powerful and dynamic duo, if you will. And the last two positive things that I'll mention have to do with hardware and software. Number one, as I've said time and time again, the SoCs in the newest iPad Pros, the 3rd and 4th gen, the A12X and the A12Z are just incredibly powerful ARM-based chips. They're comparable to quad-core i5 laptop processors, if that tells you anything. And with the optimization with iPadOS, you can do incredible things like 4K editing in LumaFusion. I'll open that up here, and of course, other tasks like gaming and rendering. So, you can do a lot with the hardware and software here. And secondly, you have a great selection of apps. This is not like the Surface Pro X, which doesn't have a lot of .exe files that can, accommodate the ARM-based processor inside of it. But the iPad has been ARM for years, and there's a great, like I said, selection of apps on the App Store, a well-established selection. You can get LumaFusion, Affinity Photo, a lot of great alternatives to your more industry-leading apps, especially in the creative realm. But before we continue here, I want to quickly talk about today's video sponsor, PaperLike. And if you haven't heard of them, they make these incredible screen protectors that transform the glass surface surface of your iPad into that of a paper-like one, hence the name. And yeah, it just brings a really intuitive and tactile feel to your note-taking. I did handwritten notes for years and notebooks and composition notebooks and stuff like that, so I love the fact that I can emulate the feeling here with my iPad Pro. It just makes note-taking, like I said, more intuitive and engaging. And unlike other screen protectors that try to emulate this look and feel that often sacrifice image quality and brightness and colors, PaperLike with their PaperLike 2 have gotten down to a science how to maintain the image quality while at the same time giving you this new texture, and it really does work. It has decent viewing angles, and while the screen does look more matte compared to that of a screen protectorless iPad Pro, it's very impressive what they've been able to do while offering this paper-like surface. So I highly recommend picking one of these up if you're someone like me who does a lot of intense note-taking, or if you're doing a lot of drawing. You will genuinely love this accessory. The installation is fairly easy. They send you two just in case you screw up, and I will leave a link in the video description if you're interested. And no, if you do purchase one, you do help the channel out a lot. But let me get into the more, controversial bit, I guess, here. Let's talk about why this setup does not replace a laptop. Number one, it just isn't balanced the same way here. I mean, laptops have lighter displays and they have more of their weight in the keyboard part, like it makes for a better laptop experience, like when you have this in your lap, it feels like the iPad Pro is going to tilt forward, and they even added weight to the keyboard to counteract this, but still, it's not quite the same experience. And secondly, like I said in my review, the tilt is just not that great. I hope that in the next iteration of the Magic Keyboard, they allow you to tilt back even more. I don't know what led to this limitation, but when you're using this on a slant, it's not a fun time. Like if you have your knees sort of at a slant and you're using this, it just doesn't work out. You can't really do it. And the only real place that you can use this comfortably, I think, is on a tabletop or very flat on your lap. And that's not always the case for where you're sitting or whatever, but with the laptop, you can just kind of have it in any orientation and, appropriately adjust the display so you can see it and not strain your neck. And then there's the trackpad. It's just not that big. It's kind of a cramped experience if you ask me. And I know they had to keep to a certain form factor, and you're probably like, well, you're comparing this to a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro. And while I may be doing that, at the same time, I feel like, or from my experience, I've seen premium laptops with bigger, more spacious trackpads, which allow you to have a more comfortable trackpad cursor experience. So while this does add utility, it's definitely smaller than I would like. Another thing I'll mention here, and I said this in my review, there's no function keys on this device. And I get that Apple, it's like a different operating system. They want you to make use of the gestures and the control center, but I don't like it. I tried to like it, I tried to get used to it, and I still hate it. It's not a big deal if you want to use iPad, you can definitely get used to it, but for me, while I have both, I definitely prefer laptop function keys for pausing music and adjusting volume and brightness and doing other things, other functions. I just hate the fact that Apple didn't include that here, and I get there was a limitation, and personally, maybe I prefer bigger keys like you have on here versus smaller smushed keys with a function row, but other companies have managed to implement that, and I wish that Apple would have. It's kind of disappointing. And that's another reason why it doesn't feel like a traditional laptop. And then of course there's the OS, and while it's come a long way, and while there's a better file management system and you can use external storage and whatever, it's just not quite Mac OS. And I hate when people sort of conflate the two and just be like, they're equally capable, blah blah blah. They're getting close. You can do video editing, you can do document typing and everything, but the fact of the matter is, even just the way it's set up, the UI is different. You don't have floating windows with the iPad Pro or iPad for that matter, and I personally like that. I like having a bunch of windows open that I can kind of quickly switch to with just the the move of my cursor with my mouse, if you know what I mean. And then the file system with iPad Pro or iPad OS in general is just kind of watered down. I've said this before and I'll say it again, it's definitely better than no file management system, but it's just not quite Finder. I just don't feel as powerful or as organized, if you will, when I'm browsing my apps. Even with File Explorer or whatever the Windows alternative is. I'm not even a big Windows user, but I think that file management system is a bit more I don't know, professional and organized, like I just said. And finally, while the app selection for iPad Pro is excellent with the App Store here, the fact of the matter is the industry-leading applications are just not available on this platform. And while you can take advantage of so many of the great alternatives, as I've mentioned, and I know professionals do so and make money doing so, for example, Photoshop is not quite ported over yet. It's a decent app, you can do a lot of things you can do in full Photoshop. I was like manipulating this weird selfie that I took. But long story short, the full desktop or laptop version is just more capable, and there's more features involved with that. And if you're used to working with that application, the experience does not translate here. So if I wanted to do, Photoshop work with a tablet per se, I would, pick up a Surface Pro 7 or a Surface Go 2 even over this device for right now. And even with video editing as well, while I like LumaFusion, I don't know, I just don't get the same experience that I get with Final Cut Pro, being able to drag images off my desktop. And I don't know, like, I just prefer a laptop or desktop operating system to do this. This feels a bit more like, I don't know, restricted. Not as restricted as iMovie, for example, which was the standard or the only app you could really use for years. But yeah, I mean, like, this is probably, to me, personally, like 80% as good as Final Cut Pro. And that extra 20% makes a difference if you're using, a video editing application every day. But I'm not discouraging you from using this. I know plenty of people who use this and are very happy with this application. So yes, at the end of the day, while the iPad Pro makes for a fantastic laptop alternative with the benefit or the addition of the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil, especially if you're doing artwork or handwriting notes or doing any, productivity-oriented stuff, the fact of the matter is, you cannot just act like this can replace any laptop. It can't. And for me, even, although I'm not doing anything crazy with my iPad Pro or my MacBook Pro or MacBook Air for that matter, the experience is just not the same for the reasons that I mentioned, and also in regard to the software that this operating system can actually run right now. And that about wraps things up here. I hope this video helped you out. Once again, I'd appreciate it if you leave a like, comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or opinions, and of course, subscribe for more content like this. Make sure to check out my link to PaperLike. This accessory is definitely something I recommend for everybody if you own an iPad Pro and you're super into handwriting or drawing, etc. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.